Hello and welcome to the Wildcard Rewind. This week we're doing something a little different. We're not rewinding this week, we're actually fast forwarding and to the 2024 draft class. But first, let's play the video.
I just want to rewind to when we were young and hard. Back to all those good times. Take me back to the start.
Oh, yes, it is Monday. We are back. I'm amazed. I'm joined by my amazing co-hosts and an amazing guest. I will introduce you to them in a minute. But first, I just want to remind you all that on Saturday, the 20th of May, the guys over the Wildcard Dynasty are doing their third streamathon, which is 16 hours of Dynasty content. And they're doing this all for Mine Charity. It's an amazing charity. I believe it's being kicked off by two of the people on this video, Mags and Hannah representing, But yeah, guys, please donate to that and please check it all out. It'll be amazing. So let's get to it. Let's introduce our two co-hosts. First of all, we've got Hannah. Hannah, how are you doing on this fine Monday evening?
Well, I'm doing fabulous, Paul. Great to be chatting to you guys again this week. And I'm really excited to see what's coming up potentially in the 2024 draft class and who we can get excited about, who we're going to talk about for a year, and obviously eventually see where they end up next season.
Yeah, can't wait. It's going to be wicked. And we're bringing the other co-host, Mags. How you doing, buddy?
Yeah, very excited to look forward to this 24 class and see who the Chiefs are going to pick at 32.
What a shame you're not going to have that pick. Yeah, so let's introduce our guest. We're looking forward. So we thought of bringing in a Devy guy, and we thought of nobody better than Jord, or at Jord M87. He's one of the best Devy minds in the game, and part of you started your own thing now at the Devy Workshop, which kicks off soon. Jord, how are you doing, mate?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you all for bringing me on. I'll slip you that £20 later, Paul, for all them nice words. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Yeah, appreciate you having me on.
No, I couldn't think of anyone better, mate. When we had a chat and we were like, oh, let's do a show where we look forward to 2024 picks. I thought of you straight away, mate. I thought of you. I thought you're the man to bring in. But George, let's kick it off with the first guy you want to talk about. Who do you want to talk about?
I guess I'm going to start with quarterback. So I think there's only one place to start in there, and it's Caleb Williams. When people say definition of a PlayStation controller, QB, this Caleb Williams, I'm not a person for comparisons, but the amount of time that commentators have said he's just Patrick Mahomes in college, it's getting a bit boring now. But yeah, he can make every throw in the NFL, level of arm talent wise, the NFL want. He can do it all. Last season, behind an average O-line, he was absolutely unbelievable with the plays that he makes, and it's just silly to think how good he is already. And there's still so much to clean up as well. He just seems to get away with it because of how good his arm talent is. His footwork can be a bit off sometimes, but his arm's that strong. He can be off balance, throwing off his back foot and still hit the target from 50, 60 yards. He is unbelievable, and like I say, it's still scratching the surface on what he can be, and yeah, for me, there's no one better to watch in college at the moment. He's such a fun guy.
Yeah, so I've heard. I don't really watch college myself. I will be honest, but I've heard there's names that we do here in the fantasy community. Caleb Williams is one of them names that I've heard a lot. And I was just having a little look through at his stats, and his 2022 stats was he threw the ball 500 times for 333 completions, 4,537 yards and 42 touchdowns. And I was just like, oh my God, this guy is destined to be the number one pick overall. And I know in this draft, a lot of people spoke about teams that are going to tank for Caleb Williams and how much of a generational talent he is. So I'm going to ask you a question now. Okay. and I know you don't want to answer it because you're a Seahawks fan, but who's the dream landing spot for Caleb Williams?
I'd probably say LA Rams, to be honest with you. Yeah, it's probably. Yeah, I think we all know it might potentially be the Cards for you, Paul. You know, who knows what's going to happen with Kyler Murray? That's another story. But yeah, all the talk is it could be Arizona Cardinals. He'd be a great fit there. Yeah, I wouldn't want him in. I wouldn't want to face him twice a year, to be honest with you. You mentioned all them stats, and like I said, his O-line was very poor, and he still managed to pull out all these stats, you know. So yeah, it would be a nice fit for him, Cards, but I hope it's someone else.
He's got to be good behind a bad O-line because he's going to go so early in the draft. He's going to go to a team that have not got a great O-line. Unless somebody's going to give up the house to go and get him, a bit like San Francisco did for Trey Lance, you know, a couple of years ago. They gave up everything to move up to an early pick and take a QB like that. He's not going to get a good O-line. He's not going to do anything. Another stat that stood out for me was he over 2 years he has 814 rushing yards and 16 rushing touchdowns. Now, do we put him in the same bracket as a Konami Code QB? Is he much of a rusher, or do you think he's more of a he'll rush at the, you know, last decision is going to be when he rushes?
Yeah, I think that's what it is. Like I say, he has got the talent to like rush and make plays with his legs, and obviously there's design plays where he's done that. But a lot of the time, it's when he feels comfortable. You know, he's when the pocket collapses, he doesn't panic. If there's a throw on, he'll go to that throw first. He'll go for his reads, and he will always look to throw first. But when he gets compared to Mahomes, it's when you see him. You go look at some of his plays. He's running around the backfield and he gets out of something that's impossible to get out. Really, and that's where he gets like the Mahomes comparison for. And obviously his sidearm throws help and stuff. But yeah, it's not he doesn't need to rush, but he has got that in his arsenal, which is always going to be a great upside for especially a rookie guy coming into the NFL.
Yeah. So as soon as we're talking about one of the best players here, I will ask you guys. Hannah, have you got anything that you want to add on Caleb Williams? Okay, I think we've lost Hannah. Mags, do you want to add anything on Caleb Williams?
Yeah, Caleb Williams, I think you said it, Paul. Like he's destined to go at 1-1, and yeah, unless something really, really drastic happens, that's where he's going to end up. My interesting thought is with somebody like the Cardinals, like how good a quarterback do you need to have before you trade away that pick? You know what I mean? Like the Cardinals got Kyler Murray, and everyone's basically saying, no, the Cardinals will trade Kyler Murray and they'll just take Caleb Williams. So it's like, well, Caleb Williams coming in, like what kind of territory is he coming in right away in the NFL in terms of the best quarterbacks in the NFL? Because Kyler Murray's he's up there, and if people are pretty much saying that the Cardinals will choose Williams, I mean, like how good is this guy? Is he like up there with, you know, your Trevor Lawrence's and that kind of category, Jord? What do you think?
He's on his way to being there. It's a great point you're making. Like obviously, Caleb Williams is good, but we've seen flashes of Kyler Murray. You know, when he's on the field, he's brilliant as well. You know, like it comes down to the team. It's like, well, we've got Kyler Murray here. Do we have to spend that much capital on Caleb Williams and move Kyler Murray on where we've got a rookie contract for so many years? That's what it all comes down to, this stuff, you know. And then is the best option to do that and then carry on picking players. You know, you're going to give up some capital when I know they've started the rebuild process already. Maybe it's best to keep him, but to be fair, he could play for anyone, you know, like Caleb Williams. So it doesn't, you know, Cardinals it's like we said, it's a good fit earlier, but he could walk into any team and be that guy, you know. Obviously, we said off screen, Spencer Rattler, a guy that burnt me, and we all going into his last year thinking he was going to go to the draft. How much that didn't pan out, so it can happen, but I'll be very surprised if it did with Caleb Williams.
Yeah, Hannah, we lost you a minute ago. I was going to say, is there anything that you wanted to add on Caleb Williams before we moved on?
Yeah, to be honest, I was just going to ask Jordan a question, but I think you may well have been discussing it already. But my biggest concern always these QBs that go number one is usually the quality of team they're going to is particularly poor. So their surrounding kind of, team usually is not very helpful. So it can, in some cases, hinder a QB's development, and we don't always see the best of what we expect from them. So I guess my question is kind of, what are his surroundings at the moment? We know that the O-line's not ideal. We've already discussed that, but, has he got decent wide receiving core? Like, do you think he could cope with going to a poor quality offense and still play the style of football he has been playing? Or do you think that he will struggle a bit, to start with poorer quality weapons around him, kind of thing?
It's tough to say, because like you say, obviously the O-line was poor, so he managed to still suffice for there, but obviously he had some other wide receivers and Jordan Addison there last year, which was a massive help. He has got a guy that's transferred over from Arizona who had a really good season last year, Dorian Singer. So he could step in for Addison. He's really capable of doing that, like what he did last year with Arizona and the quarterback there. So it's going to be interesting. Obviously, it's another question for him to answer, but so far he's done that. Like I say, it's when he's needed to step up for his team, because the defense were awful as well, so they were giving up 35 points constantly, USC at times, and he put the team on his back and still managed to win so many games and getting over like 40 points. So he has done it so far to show that whatever's put in front of him, he's been able to do it. But this is the thing with when it comes to NFL, it's a different type of test in it, and we spoke right off screen before that you just sometimes you can never guess really until it happens.
Yeah. What we were mentioning was how many number one overall picks have not turned out to be what they were tipped to be and stuff like that. But from what I can gather, it sounds Caleb Williams is in a different league to some of the people that we have gone number one overall. And I do think it's going to be interesting to see what Arizona do. I think that's going to be one of the biggest questions of the next 12 months, whether Arizona decide to move on from Kyler or, trade away the pick, keep Kyler. It's going to be one of them that I'm sure a lot of people are going to ask Arizona fans what they'd like to do. And I don't think I could ever make that decision, to be honest. From what you're saying about Caleb Williams, we've got the next Patrick Mahomes coming, but
I know what's going to happen. We'll talk about this the whole season, and then in the last game you'll win and you won't have the number one pick anymore, and it will have been a waste of our lives talking about it.
Can you imagine? Oh, just do what the Texans did and go win their last game and end up having the number 2 pick or something.
Well, I was about to say you don't even need, like, there's just as good a chance that the Texans will end up with the first pick, and you've got that pick anyway.
You know what I mean? There's so much to do.
I just think the Texans have motivation now to not.
Yeah,
they have motivation to try not be, last, basically. So I think they're going to try their best not to do that. I don't know whether the team will be strong enough, but they've definitely got motivation there to give you the worst first round pick that they possibly can.
Yeah, I also seen on some Cardinal chat groups and stuff like that they're all hoping that they trade Kyler to the Falcons, which I was like, oh, I don't know if I like that. I don't know if I like Kyler Murray at the Falcons. I think that would be, great for fantasy, but not a great move. But hey ho. But yeah, Jord, let's move on. Enough about Caleb Williams and our wet dream of him come to the Cardinals, and on to your next pick, mate. Who's your next guy that you want to talk about?
Well, it's a guy that's actually a lot of people have got quite close to Caleb Williams. It's after his first season of start. It's Drake May at North Carolina. Like I said, he took over from Sam Howell first year starter last year, and he was really, really good. He's more prototypical size than Caleb Williams. I think he's 6'4". Can't remember what weight he is now, 225, I guess, something like that, 250. I can't remember off my head. But yeah, it's more prototypical size than obviously Caleb Williams, which we did mention. His arm strength on par, he can make every throw, like across the field, deep passes, out the hashes, he's brilliant that way. He's got the dual threat ability as well, he's played in design runs, and he probably panics a bit more in the pocket than Caleb Williams. He needs to get better at that, but as a first year starter, he's going to learn hopefully. And but it's going to be a big second season. A bit similar, we mentioned again before he came on, Sam Howell. He lost a lot of his receivers and running backs in his last year before, and it kind of affected him. He's going to have to do the same. Drake May, obviously, Josh Downs, and a guy called Antoine Green, who was left. I think they got like 2/3, maybe more of the yards, from the wide receivers. So yeah, it's a big year for Drake May, obviously coming off that, and see where he's at. But a lot of people have got him quite close to Caleb Williams at the moment, so it's going to be these two fighting it out, I think, for next year's draft.
Yeah, Hannah, what do you think of Drake May?
Yeah, I did watch a little bit of his film, not a great deal, if I'm honest. And I am similar to Paul. I'm not a massive college person. I enjoyed watching him. I thought he was good, but when I saw him, I personally thought he was like a step down from Caleb Williams. Now, that might have been just the games that I saw, but I don't know. I think he was just, I can't put my finger on it, but I just didn't quite feel that he had the command of the game quite as much. Now, that might be just because this is his first full year starting. He has not a lot of experience, so maybe that potentially is it. I thought he's another interesting one. He did similar to Caleb Williams in that he did quite a lot of rushing last season. So he rushed for like 698 yards and 7 touchdowns. So this is another question for you, Jordan, actually. Are you finding now in the college game that we're getting more of these, like, rushing or kind of what, as Paul puts it, the Konami code QBs that will do both rushing and, pocket passing? Or are these just two slightly different QBs that we're seeing coming through? It just, obviously historically it's all been pocket passers, and we seem to be getting more and more of these kind of dual threat QBs coming through. And is this a trend that we're seeing now in college, or is it just that, as I say, these two happen to be coming out at the same time?
No, there's quite a lot of them in college. There's obviously a lot that obviously are not at the talent as Caleb Williams and Drake May. Maybe that's to do with passing or whichever. But yeah, you do see it a lot in college because it opens up the playbook a lot more. Drake May was used on a lot of designed runs, which you don't see much of in the NFL. Like, I don't know if that's going to transfer over to the NFL. You get a few, but you get quite a lot of plays each game, designed runs with quarterbacks here. Where it's just tuck and run. So yeah, you do see it a lot in college, but I think that's how the game's played more there in the NFL. It could transfer where we could start getting a lot more, but I still think it's going to be as it is now, where you'll get a few, but there's a few. Just depends on your play calling as well. A lot of college guys are coming over where they use that as well, but there's still some stubborn guys there that prefer the old pass before run as well.
And go on, Paul.
I was going to jump in with a question. So we're talking about rushing QBs and stuff like that, and I've just had a little look at Anthony Richardson, who was the pick 4 in this draft and tipped to be the next great thing. And what I'm looking at is Drake May's stats from last year are actually better than his passing and better than his rushing. So the fantasy community have gone absolutely mad for Anthony Richardson, and we had Murph on, who absolutely ripped him a new one and basically said the only reason he looks good is because he did well in a gym test. So I'm putting this to you now. Do we think Drake May is the type of person that if he gets the right landing spot that people are going to look at in the same way as they are with Anthony Richardson, or do you think he's better?
As it stands now, Drake May's done more in college, and that's like, I don't mean that as a knock to Richardson. You only can do what you do in college. In Florida, you've got to remember, obviously, Anthony Richardson's playing in the SEC. There's Drake May's playing in the SEC. It's a difference in levels. Obviously, there's Clemson in there, but there is higher level talent in there. And but as it stands now, Drake May's done more, and you've just got to look at the watch the film and see yourself, that he's done more. But doesn't mean Anthony Richardson's a worse player. He's just, it comes down to everything. It comes down to who you've got there as well. And I thought Anthony Richardson did pretty well, and he's got the talent to go and do something in the NFL. But again, it's not a cop. I don't mean this as a cop out. You just don't know until you get there. Anyone can say, "Oh, this guy's not going to be good. This guy is going to be good." You know, like I said off air, you know, I was a massive Sam Darnold guy, and I still think you can see that he has got something about him. But it comes down to everything in the NFL. It comes down to confidence, you know, mental, you know, everything can play a part in it. And if you're not there mentally, Anthony Richardson looks like he's there for it, but we just don't know. You know, that's the fun thing when it comes to this kind of thing, and especially playing fantasy. It's you can look a genius guy, and sometimes you can't, and you move on to the next year and you try again. But to answer your question, yeah, I'd say Drake May is probably looking the better on paper. He's got actually better stats than Caleb Williams if you look at it, but stats are different in college compared to moving on to the NFL.
Yeah. Go on, Hannah. Go on.
No, I was just going to ask another question. Jordan, I'm just interested to know, you know, comparing Caleb Williams and Drake May, how do you have them kind of stacked up against each other? Do you have it, you know, that they're close together? Do you have Caleb Williams like in a tier on his own? Like, how do you see the two based on how they've played so far? Obviously, we've still got another year of college to go, and things can change massively. Injuries, you know, how they play, all things like that can, you know, drop them or raise them up the board or whatever. But as we stand now, how do you see the two? You know, how do you kind of judge them against each other, I suppose?
Yeah, I'm not in the circles of Drake May close to Caleb Williams, and that's not because I'm a Pac-12 fan either, you know, because I'm a Washington fan. I think Caleb Williams is ahead of Drake May. You know, like you said, there's another year left. You've got to put into context that Drake May is this is his first full year. You know, he can probably improve on that. But I just feel when it comes to the NFL, you need, like, Drake May has got the talent, and he's got you know, the things that he can do. His arm talent is really good. But he's still, when it comes to decision making in the pocket, he's quite far behind Caleb Williams, in my opinion. You know, Caleb Williams, like, obviously, when someone scrambles, you think it can come across as panicky, but the way Caleb Williams does it, it's really smooth, and it's like he knows what he's doing. He's always got a plan, and I think that's, for me personally, why I think Caleb Williams is ahead of Drake May, just mentally and stuff. With it, like I said, not a knock on Drake May. I just think that Caleb Williams is just, his intelligence is like second to none compared to others, and Drake May still could be a good quarterback, but yeah, I'd say Caleb Williams is quite a bit of a distance, in my opinion, in front of Drake May.
You're on mute, Paul.
Don't know how that happened. Max, anything to add before we move on with Drake May?
Yeah, not too much really. I think I'm in the same camp as Jord. I see a bit of a tier gap between, kind of almost like what people were saying whenever you had like Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields coming out. Like, there was that obvious kind of like gap between the two, despite both obviously being very, very good. I think by the end of it all, everyone will be fairly unanimous that it's going to be Caleb Williams going before Drake May.
Yeah. So, Jord, I'm going to push you now for your dream landing spot for Drake May.
I knew you'd do this. I hate choosing dream landing spots because it just never.
I'm going to put you on the spot, mate.
I tell you what would be nice for
the Indianapolis Colts. Yeah.
I'll tell you what would be nice. Probably not for him, but it'd be a good landing spot. Is probably the Raiders, especially for Drake May. Like I say, I don't know what, like, play calling wise. I don't know if he'll be there. The ex-Pats guy. I forgot his name now. But yeah, I think it might be a struggle early on, but I think he'd fit the system there. But there were loads of people in the comments after saying I'm totally wrong, so that's why I hate doing them.
But yeah, okay, then, mate. Let's move on to our next guy. Who's your third and final QB?
Yeah, I just throw him in and briefly touch on him because I think he's going to be a guy that probably shoots up rankings in just the draft and fantasy as well, because he's another guy with dual threat ability, strong arm. It's Jordan Travis from Florida State. He had a really good year last year. Really cleaned up loads of areas, last year compared to the year before. Less tuck and run. It were like he's just more calculated in what he does, and I can see him really pushing maybe Drake May. To be honest with you, if he continues to improve like he did last year, I think, in my opinion, I'll reiterate, this is my opinion, so please don't shoot me down. It's probably the best natural rusher in college from quarterback. The way he rushes, it's again, I hate comparisons, but it's very Lamar-like. As in like everything's done with a purpose and stuff. I'm not saying he's Lamar, by the way. Again, please don't shoot me down. I'm not saying he's Lamar, but it's just how he rushes. He's like a running back. It's like he can make people miss for fun. He's he's a guy just to watch out for. I think he will shoot up draft boards in, like I say, in fantasy and in the actual draft.
Yeah. So, Mags, what's your thought on the next Lamar Jackson, then, mate?
Well, first of all, we have to give credit to Jord for not being a complete homer and putting in Michael Penix here, which I know he probably wanted to do. So we'll chat about Jordan Travis, who's great fun to watch. You said Lamar Jackson. Whenever I was watching this guy, I thought, oh, he's a bit like Deshaun Watson-esque in the way that like he will sit in the pocket like this year, especially, and he has this like cannon. He's got this big arm that he's quite happy to like bomb the ball downfield. So I was like, oh, it's a little bit like Deshaun Watson-y as well. Like it was quite nice to see. And yeah, like you said, something he has worked on a lot, like this kind of more patience sitting in the pocket, which is always good. He's going to want to develop that. As he goes forward, he's kind of cleaned up some interception issues. One thing I did see, and I don't know if you spotted this as well, Jord, he kind of throws the ball a bit weird. Like his right leg kind of pops out a little bit and like up to the right and off. He doesn't look like the most natural thrower in the world, but he's obviously still developing that, and he is like an absolute cannon with the ball in his hands running. One thing though is by the time he's drafted, he will be 24, which is always a little bit of a not a red flag, but like a little yellow flag against him, I suppose. So yeah, that's maybe some things people might want to keep a look at, those throwing mechanics and the fact that he is a little bit older than some of these other guys. And you know what? For more pressure on you, I've actually picked the ideal landing spot for me, and we'll see if we match up, Jord.
Yeah, I just said I don't like landing spots. Thinking
we're going to do it to you anyway, mate. So we're going to.
Yeah, I know.
Or should we take the heat off you and let Mags just predict his landing spot? Yeah.
So.
Go on, Mags. Who do you think?
I said the New York Giants.
Yeah, I probably want to go on there, but that's not because I'm saying I'm right. You probably have got more idea than me, to be fair. So yeah,
I hate doing landing spots. But I wouldn't have gone to the Giants.
No, I mean, I wouldn't have guessed that one. So I put it.
Yeah. But yeah, okay. Then Hannah, anything to add on Davis before we move on?
No, I'm happy to move along.
Days. Go on then, Jord. Let's move on to our next position and our next player then.
So we're on to running backs, and I've got to shove Travion Henderson in there. His hype's died a bit from last year because I think he missed 4 or 5 games through injury, and even when he was playing, he looked like he was still carrying that injury. So yeah, like I said, the hype's died down a bit. But he is a dynamic runner. You can utilize him as a pass catcher as well. In his freshman season, you saw that. He's going into his junior year now, his third year. Very good running back, speed, footwork, can make people miss in the open fields. Once he gets that gap, he's away. Obviously, he needs to work on his pass protection, and I just can't see him being that guy as well in pass protection. So obviously that limits him a bit. But yeah, it's a big year for him. Obviously missing, a few games last year, and just you've got to get another guy there and stuff that we're not going to touch on. So it's going to be tough for him to like get as much carries as he did in his freshman year. So it is a big year for him. So it'll be interesting to see where he goes. We'll talk to him going in the first round, but it's going to be tough for him unless he does something extraordinary this year.
Yeah. So I like Travion. And I was looking at his stats from 2021. Obviously, you try and ignore what he did in 2022 because he only played 8 games. But he's averaging 6.8 yards per carry. He was 1,248 yards on the season. And then, like you said, because he can do both. He also walked away with 312 yards in the receiving game as well. And as you know, the NFL is all about that double threat. Is that how you'd say it at running back, where they like a running back who can run the ball, but also is very open to receiving it, because we see this a lot now where the QB's like a dump off to the running back and away they go. So one thing that I do like about him is he kind of fits that mold of that running back. You know, he's 5'10", so he's quite big, but he's 210 pounds, so he's a solid. You know, I know a lot of people were talking about this year. There's a lot of running backs that come in that are under 200 pounds and stuff like that. You know, and so I think he's quite a big-bodied running back, and he's going to be interesting to see how he can do that in the NFL. You know, but like you said, he's got a tough year after missing games. I don't know what the injury was, but after missing games to injuries, he's got to step up now to get back solidified as one of the top running backs in this class, like, you know.
Yeah, there's the other guy that's on time. I forgot his name for a second. It's Mayon Williams, who's like really took up the mantle when he was injured. So obviously he's got to compete with him as well, which is never ideal. You know, you can still show, but the more carries you can get in college, the better it looks for you. But yeah, like I say, he's a good runner. You know, he's good in open space. Like I say, he like makes people miss, and that can, when we're talking about fantasy, I suppose, like going over to fantasy, that's a guy that like is good, but you want someone who's potentially going to be a 3-down back. You know, this guy, I can't see it myself. You know, there's a lot of work needs to be done in pass protection, you know, compared to the other guys we're going to talk about. You know, you're never perfect in pass protection when you come out of college. It's very rare, but this guy's a long way off, in my opinion.
Yeah. And also, I think the NFL is kind of going away from this 3-down sort of running back now. I think you don't see that so often now. I think having that split back and he may be a really good complement for somebody. You know what I mean? If he could maybe he'll be the 1B to somebody's 1A sort of thing. You know, I think that would work quite well for him. Like you said, he's not that 3-down running back, you know, but if he could go somewhere and be that 1B, I'll take the landing spot away from you. But if he could go somewhere and play alongside, I don't know, the likes of Travis Etienne at the Jags, like, you know, and be the 1B there, I think they'd work quite well together, you know. What do you reckon?
I'd probably say Pete Carroll will probably draft another running back in next year, and we'll have loads of them again. So yeah, somewhere like you say, you're right. You know, there's a lot of teams that are going, you know, running back by committee now. You know, and it seems to be working a lot. So he's a guy that could, who's got the speed and stuff that could go with someone with a big guy. You know, and yeah, you know, I like Tank Bigsby at thingy, so I'm not going to comment on the Jags. The Jags, I'm a big Tank Bigsby guy.
Yeah. But then again, I suppose you'd be really annoyed if Pete Carroll did to Kenneth Walker and then Zach Charbonnet and then Travion Henderson and back-to-back drafts. Like, you know, I to be honest, mate, I think you just leave the what was it, the Wildcard Twitter space that we were on. I think you just leave it at that point and just go, I'm done with this. But any of you guys got?
You took Kenny McIntosh as well, didn't he? Kenny getting there.
Anything you guys want to add on Henderson before we move on to the next player?
I think he's completely average running back. There's nothing wrong with that. He's not bad. He's not bad.
See him at the Chiefs then, Mags, yeah?
Probably. Andy Reid will turn him into a goal.
A pick 32, you know?
Yeah. He's not bad, but I'm just like, yeah, all right. It doesn't, jump off the screen.
Okay, then that'll take us on to our next running back. Who have we got, Jord?
This is a guy that, like, I hope Mags doesn't disagree with me. This is a guy who does jump off the screen. He's like probably my favourite running back in the class, and by quite a distance at the moment. It's Raheem Sanders from Arkansas. He's just big. He's powerful. He's loves contact, maybe a bit too much, to be honest with you. Probably needs to take that away from in NFL. You know, like I said, we all love contact, but sometimes it's better just to run past people sometimes. But his vision is unbelievable, you know, for a guy in college, you know, and mix that with the power and the burst. He goes on big runs, and it looks like a guy who shouldn't really pull off the big runs, but he does seem to look, even though he's moving slow, he's actually running fast. It's weird, you know. He's a big guy, and he's a guy who has got 3-down back potential. He's a little bit work on it as a blocker, but he has got that, especially when you've got that size as well. It's always going to help, it's like an immovable object. But yeah, I really love Raheem Sanders, so I won't have anyone say a bad word about him in here. He's really good, and he's like obviously at Arkansas, which isn't known for running backs, but he's stayed there for another year, and they started off with running backs by committee, and he's just taken the job, and it's his now, and I expect to see more of him this year.
Hannah, do you want to add anything on Sanders?
Jordan was so effervescent about him that he took all of my points. The only question that Marga had was his lateral ability, to kind of move out of the way and move on. I think he's a very like north-south kind of guy. And I think he's going to be great in, the screen game. And, I think he can catch passes, but he needs to be a blocker to stay in all three, to stay all three down. So he'll need to develop that really to be able to, stay on the field for all three downs. But I'm excited to see what he does. He does look really good fun. I won't say too much more because Jord might get upset at me. I'll let him do most of the talking. Actually looking at it now, I'll let you say your dream landing spot first, Jord, and I might actually steal a landing spot from Mags here, but go on.
I do. Obviously, I'd love him at the Seahawks, but I think we've got enough, and we've covered that. But I think it'd be nice fit at the Rams. I think they obviously I do like Cam Akers, but we don't know. Like he came a bit better at the end of last year, but you just don't know with him. And yeah, and you mentioned he definitely needs to put work on his blocker, but I think sometimes it can take 1 or 2 years, in the NFL, but he has got the potential to be that. He's big, definitely a north-south runner, but I don't think that's a bad thing how he does it as well, because as long as you get the job done, it's fine. We're always looking for people to do more, but if you do that one thing right, that's going off topic a bit. That's why I feel like Pete Carroll got Zach Charbonnet. He's just going to go there and just do his job. He's not going to want anything flashy. You open the lanes, just go. And obviously that might always not work in fantasy, but as long as you get in first downs and stuff, that they're happy with that. Yeah, but I'd probably say the Rams. But again, please leave me alone in the comments.
Go on, Hannah. What's your dream landing
It was only
spot?
just because when we were talking about him, I was like, oh, good in the screen game, good burst, he's a good runner. We're going to be losing our running back next season. So I was wondering whether he would have stolen. I was thinking about it, but I already see Mags has picked them for a different running back. But I think maybe in the Bengals, he my only question mark is, we like to do a lot of kind of running around the edge and stuff, whether that's kind of his bag. But the fact that we've lost our pass catching running back, although I know Joe Mixon did used to do it in college, but he's really, really terrible at blocking. That's why he doesn't stay.
Joe Mixon did a lot of things in college, by what I've been reading.
That's why he doesn't stay for 3 downs. But he sounds like he could help us out. We need some good running backs, and he'll probably be there at 32, right? Because he's a running back. So
32, yeah, okay.
You've got Chase Brown now.
Yeah.
You've got Chase Brown.
Oh yeah, he sounds just as good as Raheem, to be honest. So
weirdly, I have a lot of shares of Chase Brown in this year's rookie drafts.
Nice.
But yeah, so with that, we'll move on to the next running back. Who have you got, mate?
Yeah, just a bit similar to Jordan Travis, another guy that I think he's come off a good year. He transferred out from Oregon to Florida State. That's Trey Benson. Around about my ideal size for a back, especially when I'm looking at fantasy. 215 pounds, 6'1". He is like around 6 foot, but I'm fine with 6'1". But yeah, he's another guy who's climbing most rankings. Definitely he's going to be a fantasy darling. I can see it straight away. And exploded onto the scene last year, like I said. The hype has started already with him. I've seen a few people making, Twitter feeds and stuff about him. So, yeah, he's another big guy. He's bit different to Raheem Sanders, where he is explosive and big, but he really can get out to the to the hashes and stuff, and has people trailing, when he's running. But yeah, he's just a small bit on him, because I do think he's going to be a riser, in the draft.
Mags, do you want to take this one?
Yeah, I think what you said, he's got really good size. I thought very good speed. I was very impressed with the speed. Like, don't see a lot of people catching up to him whenever he gets some open space, which is good. I also really I quite liked his patience as well. I thought like he was dancing about, he waited for gaps, which is, a really hard skill to develop. So that's a good sign for him for sure. Hands, okay, like fine. I would love to see someone like that who is so fast really develop that kind of pass catching ability. That would be really good to see him kind of come along a little bit more with that. The one thing I thought, and I kind of seen him a bit last year when I was looking at prospects for fantasy for this year. One thing I thought was kind of similar to what I thought about Kendra Miller this year. I mean, he's a bit faster than Kendra Miller, but I thought he kind of reminded me a little bit of him. But he stands up very tall, which I know a lot of NFL teams don't really like. So hopefully that's something that you'll see next year is, him sort of having better kind of pad levels whenever he's running with the ball. And yeah, I thought Bengals would be a good spot, but Bengals, that's going to be an easy one because they obviously will have a need for that next year, I would imagine.
Yeah. So, Jord, have you got a dreamland this spot for him, or are we gonna leave you be this time?
Just leave me be, please, Paul.
Okay, I'll leave you be. But so let's move on to wide receivers and see if we can get some of these in before we run out of time. Who's your first wide receiver?
Well, I feel like you should spend a lot of time on him, but you don't need to spend a lot of time on this guy because he's just that good. Just go watch him. It's Marvin Harris Jr., Ohio State. The best wide receiver out of Ohio State in the last 4 or 5 seasons, the offensive coordinator said, and we all know who's come out of Ohio State and what they've done in the league so far. Great size, excellent hands, route running, spot on. He's not like the fastest guy, but he still can stretch the field, and there's nothing really I can knock on him really and stuff. He's just so fun, and he's going to be, wherever he goes to, he's just going to be an absolute weapon for him. I really hope it's not the Cardinals. I know Paul's been bugging me in the DMs as well about where Marvin Harrison's going to go. He wants it to. That's a dream spot for you for Cardinals for Paul. But I really hope not. But yeah, he's just. There's no words to describe how good he is, and he's got another year in college as well to rack up them numbers.
Hannah, do you want to take this one so I don't have all the best players?
Well, I mean, what do you say? He's clearly going to be the number 1 wide receiver in this draft class, I think, unless there's some sort of devastating injury, which I hope not, touch wood. I don't think there's anyone really that comes close to him, particularly as, he's touted as better than, all the guys we've seen come out already, Garrett Wilson, Jackson Smith and Jigba and Chris Olave, and we've seen already what Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson can do in the NFL. So, I'm just really excited to see what he's going to do, to be honest. He looks great. I think he's going to be great. I reckon we're going to have, wide receivers in the top 10 next year compared to top 20 this year. And obviously Paul is hoping that the Cards with their second pick get a chance to grab him, but we'll see. There's plenty of needs on that Cardinals team, Paul, so they might not want him.
But by all means, I want to sit here and I want to say, let's get Caleb Williams, let's get Marvin Harris Jr. And it'd be amazing, And we all said this about the Texans this year, didn't they? They're going to get CJ Stroud and then they need to take JSN. But to be honest, if we're going to get Caleb Williams, then protect him. Let's protect him first. Let's stop conceding points and let's start protecting our quarterback before we start going, let's give him somebody amazing to throw to. We're not going to protect him. I know it's worked for the Bengals. The Bengals got Joe Burrow.
You don't need no line.
Well,
go to the Super Bowl. You can't win it without one.
Yeah. But I think the history would tell you that the amount of times that's worked for teams would be a lot less than when it hasn't worked. So don't get me wrong. I'd love Marvin Harris Jr. to come to the Cardinals and it would be a great landing spot. But I think if I was to be realistic, I think we've got, like you said, Hannah, there's other gaps to fill first. So yeah,
You know,
not to the Cardinals.
do you know where I think I'd quite like him on? And that is if
Kansas City Chiefs.
No, but I do want to have Lions. You know, if Jameson Williams doesn't work out, you know, I think he would be awesome.
I'll give you a dream landing spot here. Just any. Anyone.
I don't want to play this game, but we're all talking about it, so I'll play this game.
just anyone. He's that good.
Yeah.
He can get on any team. Like, obviously, everyone will be after him, you know, but there'll be teams that without any wide receivers, obviously. You mentioned some there, but Giants have got so many slot receivers, they need someone on the outside, really. So we're doing him. But yeah, he can play anywhere. He's going to be a star no matter what.
Who would you compare him to? Let's ask you that instead. Who would you say his comparison is to?
You know, when I first came on in, Paul, I said I don't like comparisons. You heard me, didn't you?
Jord, I told you before you came on, mate, we weren't going to make this easy.
Anything where you get slated for it, it's always a bad. You should never get involved in it.
Embrace it. Embrace it.
Okay, I'll embrace it. I just don't think you can compare him to anyone, to be honest with you, Paul. I think he's just
right, with that cop-out answer, let's move on to the next wide receiver. Who else do you want to talk about, mate?
It's Xavier Worthy from Texas. Before I get into what he can do, we've got to start with his size because it's just going to go up straight away. He's as it is now, he's 6'1", fine, but he's 165 pounds. You know, it's very, very light. Obviously, we've seen a few guys in the past have gone that slightly. Obviously, Devontae Smith recently, you know, who's done okay so far. Take that away from him, he's one of the best wide receivers. You know, like I know Marvin Harrison is a league of his own, but Xavier Worthy is still really good. It's his route running's exceptional. He can burn the top off, you know, DBs. You know, his manipulation with DBs is very like up there with Justin Jefferson and stuff. You know what he can do, you know, to create separation. Is really good. Also, just get the ball in his hand, create so much from nothing. You know, big splash plays. Did suffer from a few drops last season, but I can kind of like. It's going into his last year before draft. If he's dropping still, then I'm going to be a bit more concerned. But if he can get that right this year, that's something that's going to benefit him. But yeah, his only knock's going to be his weight, but everything else is just such a good wide receiver, and it's going to be interesting to see if he can put something on, and if he loses anything from that, it's I'm not sure. Like I say, Devontae Smith has shown that he's capable of going into the NFL light. Obviously, I think he was a little bit big. I think he's a little bit big. I can't remember what he was going into the NFL now. Was he 171? I can't remember what it was, but I think he's a little bit bigger. But yeah, the size is obviously going to be question marks are going to follow him with that.
Do you know what, mate? I think we're seeing it quite a lot now. You know, I think we're seeing a lot of smaller players coming through. You know, we're seeing it more and more with QBs now. There was question marks behind the QBs and the size and stuff like that. We've just seen Bryce Young go number 1 pick overall. I believe there's a couple of quite smaller wide receivers in this year's draft class as well. And everyone just sits here and goes, Devontae Smith has done it. Now, I think Devontae Smith has done it on a really good team. So what I'm going to ask you is, would you worry that if he went to, I don't know, quite a bad, maybe a bad QB, maybe you sort of like, I don't know, your Desmond Ridder kind of. If he went to the Falcons alongside like Desmond Ridder, would you worry then that his size would affect him a little bit more, or would you still have confidence in his size?
Be careful what you say, Paul. There's still some Desmond Ridder believers out there. You know what I mean? Be careful with your words. But yeah, this is the thing. You know, like when I say he's a good wide receiver, he is really good. But I don't think he's a guy that's going to take you. Be that number 1 guy, should I say, you know, a team. You know, I look at Jordan Anderson. Jordan Anderson's a really good wide receiver, but to me, he's a wide receiver to complement someone, you know, and that's not a bad thing. You know, it's great if you've got that and stuff, and that's what I see with Xavier Worthy. You know, he'll need someone that's play alongside him, that like he doesn't have to do all the work, because I think that's where he might struggle. But yeah, he's So yeah, basically, you don't want to go to someone like the Giants. Well, basically, what we said earlier, the Giants, because they'll be expecting him to do everything.
Yeah. So I was gonna, and I'm gonna put Mags on the spot a little bit here now, and I was gonna go on to another. There was another wide receiver you wanted to talk about, but I've just noticed the time, and we're flying through time. So I wanted to throw in one of these tight ends who's tipped to be one of the best tight ends coming out in a long time, isn't he? So do you want to talk about him, Jord? And Mags, I'll let you talk about him as well.
Which one is it? Jatavion Sanders from Texas. Yeah.
yeah. Let's talk about him then. Sanders from Texas. Yeah.
It's I'm obviously Brock Bowers from Georgia. You know, he's going to be one of them. Again, I'm not comparing him to Kyle Pitts, but he's like where he can just do a lot of things. You know, he can play him out of the slot on the outside, swing passes, end arounds. He's got the speed, you know, for which is normally what we don't associate with the tight end, but we've probably seen it a little bit more now. He's just, I don't like using the term, but he is a very unicorn player where he can do a lot of things. You know, I wouldn't expect him to be used as a blocker much. He's just basically going to be a receiver. Maybe it's something he can work on. You know, he has done it a little bit in college, but it's not his game. His game is to make plays, and he can do it in most ways possible. He's an exciting player, especially for fantasy players.
Yeah, so Max, sorry to put you on the spot. I know you've not really done any looking into Brock Bowers, but I didn't think this would take us this long to get through so many players. You know, I think we've got another 6 or 7 players to go through here, haven't we? So Max, what do you think of Brock Bowers?
Yeah, Brock obviously someone that you see a lot of anyway. Just again looking at 4 players for this year's draft, you're kind of like, who's he? And like you're googling Brock Bowers, like, oh damn, like he's not coming out this year. Like I can't really get involved with him until 2024. But yeah, he is. Yeah, like you said, Jordan, it is annoying when people talk about this kind of unicorn type player. I actually think Brock Bowers is like much better. Like I know Darnell Washington did a lot of blocking and things like that, but I think Bowers can get involved with the blocking game maybe a little bit better than Kyle Pitts can as well, just with like his physicality. But yeah, he's going to go in the first round of the NFL draft next year. Like for sure, he seems really lethal in the red zone as well, which is obviously huge for any kind of tight end. And yes, someone that can come in and, you know, what everybody is hoping for with a tight end is, can you be that number 2 receiving option in a team, or in rare cases, even that number 1 receiving option on a team? And I think Brock Bowers has definitely got the ceiling for that for sure.
Yeah. So Hannah, anything you'd like to add on Brock Bowers? Or
I just think at the tight end position is a really interesting conversation at the moment, because I think potentially it's kind of changing. You know, obviously, you know, historically you've wanted these dual threat where they can block and then obviously then peel out and catch, you know, and nowadays more and more they're looking for these receiving tight ends. And, you know, we've seen so many of them do really well. But like George Kittle, I think is the unicorn in the NFL in which he can do both things really, really well. And I think more and more we're getting such separation between the two. Like you're either a really good receiver, you know, and you're going to be a weapon on the team, or you're going to block. And there's fewer and fewer of these that do this combination. And I think it's interesting that I think more and more NFL teams are trying to find these receiving weapons and have them as like mismatches in the game, rather than, you know, I think there's fewer kind of want for this dual. Obviously, if you can find the unicorn, fabulous, but they're so rare that I think now people are just looking at, right, let's just see what skill sets they've got, and, you know, and we'll work with that. And I think tight ends are becoming cheap receivers a lot more nowadays, you know, than historically. And I just think it's interesting how the tight end position is shifting. I think now within the NFL, you know, they're becoming more and more of these receiving options. You know, those that do it amazingly are few and far between, but people are hunting for them. You know, there's a litter from this tight end free agency class of tight ends that people wanted to become receiving weapons or whatever on their teams, and for some reason they didn't work out, or they've moved on to other things. You know, they're trying to find that way. They're trying to find Kelsey, aren't they, or a Kittle or whatever, and it's very difficult to do. But people I feel like are reaching more and more to try and get these receiving weapons, which I think it's changed from years past, you know.
Yeah, that was something I was gonna say, and I'm glad you said it. I was gonna say I feel like a lot of teams now are searching for that unicorn, aren't they? And we're seeing it more and more now that, you know, every year there seems to be this, you know, since Kyle Pitts, you know, it's like, oh, Kyle Pitts is coming out. He's a generational talent. Now, don't get me wrong. He is an absolute insane player, and I don't think he's being utilized in the right way over at Atlanta. And I think they've got something scary there that they're not unleashing that beast, you know. But I do feel like every year there's this guy we talk about, and everyone wants him to be that Travis Kelce, like you said, Hannah. Everyone wants, you know, I'm not saying Brock Bowers is Travis Kelce or he's going to be Travis Kelce or he isn't going to be, you know, he could be the next Travis Kelce. But I do feel like what you're saying, that the tight end position it is changing, and I think everyone is searching for that. And I'm quite excited to see what Brock Bowers does. So, Jord, who's your landing spot for Brock Bowers? Kansas City Chiefs.
To be fair, the Seahawks could be in for a tight end soon, but I think we could rather have someone who could block as well at the same time. But I think Hannah's right. You know, the other guy that we're not going to have much, we don't have time to talk about, Jadavion Sanders. Joking, like we joked about him retaining for, but he's another guy who's mainly a receiving threat, and he's not as dynamic as Brock Bowers, but he has got that ability, and he's, again, not someone who's known for blocking as much, but you can be a nuisance as a blocker when you're that big as well. At the same time, you don't have to be as talented.
So I really like what the Steelers did in this draft. So Darnell Washington was a really good blocker, and they've gone and picked him. So, you know, he could be a blocking tight end where Pat Freiermuth can be the receiving tight end. So I like what they've done there, and maybe that's something that, if that works, that people will maybe start doing and trying to pick up a blocking tight end and a receiving tight end instead of picking up the ones that do both.
The only thing, obviously, the problem there is when you have one on the field, you know, he's going to be running the routes, and when you have the other on the field, and he's going to be doing the blocking, and it just makes it a bit more predictable. Obviously, that's why these unicorns obviously are so amazing. So, you know, I guess you have to try and be creative with it for it to work. It'll be interesting to see, but, you know, sometimes it's still not that easy to have the two separate roles, you know, because it just makes it a bit more potentially more obvious about what you want to try and do, you know.
Yeah, so I was just so we have run out of time, and I was just having a look at how many more players we had, and we had eight more names to talk about. So guys, we totally nailed this with our timings and whatnot. But Jord, is there anything you want to plug before you go, mate?
Can I just say that I didn't even get a chance to talk about Rome Odunze from Washington. I left Michael Penix out, and I went for the homer pick of Rome Odunze. I didn't even get time to talk about him, but it's just a name to remember. Rome Odunze from Washington, just for me to make me happy. Obviously, I'm obviously part of the 5 Yard College crew, so I'm writing for the Pac-12. There's going to be some stuff coming out there, so make sure you follow 5 Yard College and just 5 Yard Rush in general. You know. Obviously, Hannah's linked with them as well. So, yeah, give all us a follow. And obviously, yeah, the Devi workshop is going to come out next week. We've got loads of videos planned there on YouTube, but it will be a podcast as well. So keep an eye out on that, and hopefully we can get more people playing Devi and watching college football.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that, because I do actually play in a Devi league, and I do enjoy it, to be fair. And I'd like to. It is something I'd like to look at more. I do like that, drafting the college guys and hoping, and like you said, you've seen it with Spencer Rattler, where you take somebody that you think is going to be amazing and it burns you, and I love that risk factor to it. So I will be looking forward to listening to your new podcast coming out, mate. And with that brings us to the end of the show. Thanks, guys, for tuning in once again. Be sure to subscribe and follow us on Twitter at Wildcard Rewind. Head over to our YouTube channel, search the Fantasy Wildcard Podcast Network, and make sure you give us a subscribe and all of that. And don't forget to check out the Wildcard Dynasty guys on Saturday when they do their 16-hour streamathon. See you next week, guys.